Story 1. The Backrooms. The Backrooms is a relatively recent example of internet folklore that is still expanding its scope and mythology. Essentially, the backrooms posit the existence of a place that people can slip or not-slip into and become lost or trapped. An unreality behind or parallel to this reality. The backrooms are not inherently sinister on first viewing, as they appear to be, simply an occupied office space of banal manila walls, long corridors, and ugly carpets. The terrifying element comes with the idea of finding yourself there unable to escape, trapped in a labyrinth of these corridors that is unending and eternal, meaning that there is no exit, and that anyone finding themselves in this other dimension will be confined there perpetually. There is also the added detail that there are others or other things of an apparently malevolent nature in this environment with you, and that every moment you remain inside, you run the risk of encountering one of these denizens of the other place. Like many creepypasta notions or ideas, the backrooms mythos evolved from an ekphrastic exercise. That is, it was a response to a piece of art inspired by a single image. This is a common occurrence in the creepypasta community, with notable creepypasta story such as Slenderman, the Rake, and even the Russian Sleep finding their origins in a disturbing image, for which a fictional backstory was then proposed. On May 12th of 2019, the original Backrooms image of a corridor with an oppressively bright strip light, manila walls, and no furniture was posted in 4chan's X paranormal board in response to a request for images that were unsettling or which just felt a bit off. The image had initially been posted on a 4chan discussion about cursed images anonymously almost a year earlier, April 21st, 2018, with no accompanying text. This is the first known posting of the image itself. Neither the identity of question poser or the person who responded with this image in the 2019 posting is known, but we do know that it was from this posting that the Backrooms mythos was born, as it was on this posting that the image was first paired with brief explanatory text. The text which read, "If you're not careful and you knock-slip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old, moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum humbuzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you created in those few short sentences enough background and suggestion to kickstart other creators into using the backrooms as a setting for their own stories, or as the starting point for an exercise in world mythos building. The initial pairing of text with the image is interesting in a number of ways. Firstly, it claims knowledge not only of the dimensions, but the features of this place. It also suggests the idea that something in this setting would hear you, giving the impression that you're not alone. Following the meeting of the image with text, the idea of the backrooms quickly spread, appearing first in another thread on X, with the text and image combined on May 14th of the same year, then in green text where it was proclaimed to be worse than any creepypasta out there and gained a great deal of visibility and acclaim. By May 18th, a creepypasta based upon the concept had been posted by Jordanjai, with Twitter users posting animations of wandering through the infinite backrooms It was approximately 12:15 when I entered the Johnson County Community Health Clinic. I was there for an appointment I had set up weeks ago, just a routine checkup. It wasn't a new place for me. I had been there a couple of times before. However, the place had an odd, nostalgic feel to it, as if it were a location from my childhood or something, and I could never pinpoint exactly what this feeling was or where it came from. As I walked in, an overwhelming feeling of déjà vu swept over me. The hum of the flickering fluorescent lights, the white tile flooring, the muted beige paint that colored the walls. I noticed that there was a TV mounted in the corner, a smaller flat screen, that was playing a short PowerPoint slideshow on a loop of ads and events that were being held by the clinic. I passed the empty waiting area, a small area of the main room with magazines, children's playthings, and blue-cushioned chairs, and approached the woman at the front desk. She was sitting in her bluish-gray office chair, looking at a spreadsheet on the same Windows XP desktop they've had since 2008. There was a sign-in sheet on the counter in front of me. "I have an appointment with Dr. Tebbins," I asked. "What time?" "12:30, I reply. She began typing something into her keyboard. "Ah, yes," she responded. "Gary Johnston." "Yes, I'll tell the doctor. Please fill this out." She handed me a clipboard which held a simple fill-out form. I walked back to the waiting area, took a seat, and began to fill out the form. I was about halfway done with filling in my information when I slumped back in my chair. I hadn't gotten much sleep the night prior, and I was exhausted. As I slumped back, I noticed something very peculiar. My head never hit the wall. In fact, it felt like it went in. I got up, quite frightened, and looked at the wall. Nothing, not a single hole or dent, had been made in the wall by my head, so I reached to touch the wall, and my fingers went through it. I recoiled in shock. What the hell was that? I thought, as I reached to touch the wall again, only to find my fingers clipped through once more. Then, suddenly, I lost my balance, tripped, and fell directly through the wall. I fell face first onto some dirty tan carpeting. Upon getting back up, I realized that I was in a completely different room. Well, not really a room per se, more so a set of rooms, all of which connected by openings. The walls were covered in gross tan, patterned wallpaper. There was also an overwhelming stench of moist carpet. I turned back around and tried to put my hand back through the wall, and it wouldn't go through. "Okay, what the fuck?" I muttered. I looked back into the room. There were no windows, no doors, nothing on the walls, other than that disgusting wallpaper. Of course, it was completely empty, aside from a singular plastic blue school chair. At this point, the only thing going through my mind was fear and the repeating thought of "I need to leave" on loop in my head. I started running through the rooms, desperately trying to find an exit, but to no avail. There was no exit. Was this my permanent location until I die? No, there had to be a way out. I wasn't just going to be left here, right? Eventually, someone would notice that I was gone, but nobody did then. In the distance, I heard footsteps, but not those of a human, at least not a normal human. Alongside the footsteps was a gurgling snarl, like that of an angry animal. I began to run. I ran as fast as I could from whatever the hell was approaching me. I didn't want anything to do with it. I ran for what seemed like forever, but I was always back in the same room I started in. At least, It looked like the same room. Not that I could tell them apart, so I sat down, defeated. A feeling of dread filled my body as I started to cry. I was going to die here. I'm still there. I haven't left. I've accepted my fate. In fact, I can actually hear footsteps. I wonder who that is. Story 2. 2 minutes in the Mansing field. I'm trying to see myself through the officer's eyes, but I can't seem to manage. To be expected, I suppose. Not big on the whole empathy thing. It can be problematic in my line of work. Standard city cop fare. He's wearing no flak jacket, slight gut, a 40 years paunch, unremarkable bones. Terrible specimen, shamed, harassing kids at the local cemetery, is likely way beyond his pay grade. Doubt he's happy to stop here. I'm not too happy about it either. Not yet. Give it a minute. He's turned on the giant flashlight, holds it like a javelin. The security blanket, not a weapon. Bet he's unarmed. Shame. Here comes the beam. First on my boots, black, rather shiny, the bands, heavily zippered, black. Now my jacket, leather, black, of course. Camouflage for moonless nights, far from the city where there's no light, pollution, where I can move freely. He swings the beam into my eyes, the prick. Wonder what he sees. My pale skin all aglow, my short obsidian hair invisible in the dark. Looks like my face is floating there, I imagine. Maybe he thinks I'm some goth out for thrills, or melancholy, whatever it is they like, wouldn't know. Terrible at that empathy business. He hasn't discovered the whole yet. Marvelous. In another minute he certainly will. What fun, too busy hovering the light over my eyes, checking whether or not they're bloodshot. Figures I'm addled, one of those chemical types. Who else would be in this place at this late hour? Who, indeed? Well, let him search. Should keep him busy. I didn't bring the dog. Cop's lucky in that regard. My dog's a hound, exceptional. Snout, trained to sniff out lime, cheap enough mineral. You can sprinkle it over bodies to prevent animals from digging them up. Or too full. Most police dogs. Not my dog. Where there's lime, there's something to hide, often murder. Where there's murder, there's a set of bones imbued with rage or fear or hatred. Strong stuff makes the bones easier to use, more pliable, more suggestible, of course. You only need a hound when you're searching out unmarked sites, forests, marshes, dumpsters. Here, everything's clearly marked, easy to find the good specimens. Check the headstones. Hunt down the years with comparatively small gaps in between. Say 17 to 30. Usually murdered, usually choice. Lots of them in the city. It's quite simple. Better not to bring the dog. I can do the searching myself. Dog would only attract suspicion. Being here. Cop might stop me for littering, not picking up after my pet. Wish he'd move that beam. Already. What did he say? Better not to answer. Half a minute. If not less. Most people would think my profession died off in the medieval era, if it ever lived at all. How little they know. I have colleagues the world over. It's the Japanese ones who make me stand in awe. I hear they have funeral towers there, for lack of land. Have to build upward, bury at sky, visiting hours, locked doors, like a hospital. Tight security, too many living stairs. There goes the flashlight beam, leaving my eyes, trailing down to the soiled shovel by my feet. Now he's scanning the ground, the piles of dirt on either side of the hole. And now the hole, wide, deep, black like strong treacle. he mumbles something, perhaps wishes he brought his two-way radio. Then he notices an open book. I dropped. Sometimes when you're first learning the Mansi, you need one of those dusty leather-bound tomes to help you. Agrippa Paracelsus, compounds to mix, words to utter, not me, not any more memorize what I need. The only books I use are my journals. For notes, results, gorgeous results, I've many. The one thing at which I'm any good, the flashlight zooms back to the hole. Was that a movement you glimpsed, officer? Delightful. No, it wasn't me. I'm here, stock still like a nice obedient boy. Did you see something? Well, right on schedule. What was it? Do tell. Though I've a notion. Silent. But why? Is that fright, officer? Oh, now he knows what I am. What I do, what I can do. Most people, I've found, recognize mancing by instinct. There's no mistaking it when they do. Those eyes that look, the quaking beam that can't tear itself away from the open grave. A skinless hand reaches out of the hole, sinking its white-boned fingers into the grass. Not my best work, but good enough. You won't have time to run, officer. Let the fun begin. Story 3. TLC. Thomas rose from his modest flower garden and wiped his filthy hands on his jeans. He stood there for a moment, his eyes lingering on the lush blossoms. A sense of accomplishment overcame him. Though the plot was humble, what it lacked in quantity, it was overly abundant in quality. The blooms were vibrant and full of life. The stems and leaves were rich and crisp. Even the dark earth was fresh and moist to the point that it caused his neighbors to envy his garden. However, very few people knew the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that had gone into perfecting his garden. He had prepared the foundation of the plot himself, choosing the strenuous task of double digging rather than tilling the soil, which loosened the earth even further so that his precious blossoms wouldn't struggle as they stretched out their roots. After planting the seedlings, Thomas had applied a thick layer of organic compost, ground leaves, banana peels, coffee grounds, and grass clippings to ensure that the flowers would receive proper nutrition. Atop that, he deposited a thin coat of mulch to assist the soil in better retaining water. Thomas had even insisted on using an organic fertilizer that, as far as he knew, could not be found in stores. The price was dear, but he soon found it was well worth it. The first time he laid his loving gaze on the pioneer stem that had broken free of the earth's clutches, an overwhelming rush of joy seized him. He was sure that the feeling could never be surpassed. He was swiftly proven wrong the next day, however, when he was delighted to find that two more seedlings had followed closely behind. First, a childlike joy filled his life, one that he had desperately been seeking. Thomas was never late to tend to his plants. He was often caught singing to each blossom individually just as the morning light broke over the horizon and bathed his garden in an elegant radiance. At these times, even the dew droplets danced and shimmered like diamonds. It was breathtaking, and he never wanted it to end. Thomas kept his adoring stare glued to the graceful blooms, even as he heard a faint rustling behind him that soon turned into muffled footsteps. Thomas Connor. As a momentary scowl of frustration passed over Thomas's tender face, he reluctantly tore his eyes from his darling garden and turned around. To his surprise, he found himself face to face with his long-ago childhood friend. If it isn't old Roar Mather. Thomas chuckled, moving in to greet his old friend with a hug in the flesh. Roy joked. "What brings you back to this sleepy town, buddy?" Roy tossed his hands into the air in mock defeat. "The wife insisted it was high time we came down here and visited the family women, eh?" A wily grin cut across his boyish features, but it was cut short. It was as if a storm cloud had passed over him, one which Thomas could neither see nor feel. "Speaking of, I heard about Tabitha." Thomas quickly cut him off, in no mood for an unannounced pity party. "She's in a better place." Roy seemed uncertain. "I suppose so. I might complain a lot, but I don't know what I'd do if I lost Carol. As sad as it might sound, I don't think I could properly function without my wife's constant nagging." He flashed a half-hearted smirk. Thomas placed a firm hand on his friend's shoulder and squeezed tightly. The two stood there for a few minutes in silence, allowing the awkwardness to evaporate until Roy finally broke the quiet. "Those sure are some mighty fine flowers, Tommy." Thomas couldn't help but feel a sensation of pride. "Thanks, buddy. They're my babies. Carol and I, well, mostly Carol, have been trying to grow our own flower garden for over a year now. But it seems we don't exactly have green thumbs. Could you let me in on your secret, so I could pass it along to the wife? Of course." He beamed sheepishly. "Just some good, old-fashioned TLC," Thomas mused, snickering at what appeared to be an inside joke. Slightly confused, Roy thanked him and headed off, leaving the man giggling to himself. "TLC," Thomas repeated as he brushed some stray dirt off of a plaque at the base of his garden. "Isn't that right, dear?" He ran a dirty finger over the words inscribed in loving memory of Tabitha O'Connor. "Story for the gurgling. I live in a small apartment by myself on the 5th floor. One night a while back I heard strange noises coming from down the hall. They weren't shots, and they weren't banging noises, and they weren't people fucking. They were weird. They sounded like gurgling. Loud gurgling. Normally I don't give a damn about what goes on in the rooms around me. My stance changes when whatever is going on pisses me off. These gurgling noises were doing just that. So I left my apartment and headed towards the door at the end of the hallway, which seemed to be the source of the sound. I banged on the door and shouted at whoever happened to be in there to shut the hell up. I stayed in front of the door for a little while to see if the noises would stop. They didn't. I banged again and shouted again. I heard a door open behind me, but I didn't turn around. I knew it was some other stupid tenant who was pissed at me for shouting. Well, I was pissed at the gurgling noises. Enter I kept banging and banging on the door. I had given up shouting because if I hadn't, I would be hoarse for a week. 10 minutes at least. After I had left my room, the noises were still coming from the room. By now, a few other doors had been opened. I could feel the people around me. I don't know if they wanted the noises to stop as well or if they wanted the noises I was making to stop. Nothing was working, and my hand was starting to get numb. I rested for a minute to let my hand get some blood flow. During that time, someone behind me started talking. "Sir," the person said. I wasn't paying attention to the voice, so I don't know if it was a man or a woman. I don't care what you think. I shouted at the person. The commentators sent me over the edge. I stepped back a bit, nerved myself, and kicked the door as hard as I could. The door burst open, and I walked inside. There was nothing. It was a bare room, completely devoid of furniture, curtains, pictures, everything. I ran all over the apartment, looking in all the rooms for something, anything that could be causing the gurgling noises. All the rooms were the same, with nothing at all inside. I checked the sinks in the bathroom and kitchen, figuring some water problem could be making the noises, but I found nothing. Both sinks ran fine, and the noises didn't seem to be louder around either sink. In fact, the noises weren't louder anywhere in the apartment. The noises were the same volume all over the apartment. I ran out of the room, planning to get on the elevator and check the apartments above and below the one I had just checked, figuring something could be in the ceiling or floor. I was stopped by the owner of the building as I ran out of the apartment. Two guys grabbed a hold of me and held me, keeping me from moving. "What's going?" "Name removed," the owner asked, a very worried look on his face. I explained the noises to him, as well as how the entire apartment was empty. The owner shook his head and turned around. I asked him what was wrong. One of the people who had gathered in the hallway while I was beating against the door said, "What noises are you talking about? There are no noises." My mother and father came to get me a couple of hours later. I was tied to a chair when they came. The other tenants had tied me up so I wouldn't hurt myself anymore trying to find the noises. It turned out that my hand was badly broken from banging against the door so much. I apparently hadn't registered the pain. I got started on electroshock again shortly afterwards. It seemed to be working. I didn't think of the noises for the longest time. Recently, however, I am hearing them again. I know that they aren't real. I remember the incident at the apartment, which I have just told you, and I remember a similar incident, which had occurred years before that one. My brain is simply wired wrong. There are no noises. I can't get them out of my head, though. They're driving me mad. I have to figure out where they're coming from. I have to stop them. The goddamn things are driving me nuts. Story 5. Slenderman doesn't exist. Slenderman isn't real. That's how this story starts. That's how this story will most likely end. I don't lie. My name is Rakshaw, and this is my story. Slenderman isn't real. Helen has said this a variety of times to me. I nod vaguely, and she cries out in frustration. I silently watch her fume, her round, pudgy pig face red all the way to the roots of her bleached hair. She looks me in the eyes, and I return her stare. She's pleading with me, but I don't care. She wants me to say a lie, but I won't do that. Obviously seeing my resolution, she stands up and storms out of the room. I hear her screaming at my fiancé that she couldn't help me, that I was a lost cause that should be abandoned. Reaching for my untouched coffee that lay on the side table aside the couch I lounged on, I stir in some of the provided sugar and wait for Yair to come and get me. When he does, his eyes show exhaustion. The stab of sympathy hits me. That's all from my yelling at night. Hardening up quickly, I give him one of my legendary cold shoulders. I told him he could leave me. He refused. Therefore his well-being was no concern of mine. He seated himself beside me on the psychiatrist's couch. Why won't you admit Slenderman isn't real? What could you possibly gain by keeping up this charade? I scoffed at him and his weakness. Was he really expecting me to soften up, lie, and tell him I would stop playing a game that doesn't exist? As if I would play such a useless game. He knows I don't play in something that doesn't benefit me in return. He didn't say a word as he got up from the couch, but just as he was about to walk out the door, he said it. I'm calling it off. Our engagement. Our relationship. Everything. I'll file all the paperwork and send it for you to sign. I'll tell your family you just keep obsessing over things that aren't there." And with that, I lost Yer forever. I didn't care. He didn't believe me. No, he didn't want to believe me, all because of his fear. I couldn't spend the rest of my life with someone that weak anyhow. I rose from the couch, dusted off my jeans, and sauntered to the dreary day in Seattle. Rain clouds were forming in the sky, ready to pour at given moment. I fingered the large kitchen knife, the lone item I kept in my handbag. A drizzle began to rain over the town, but I continued to walk east, towards the woods. He was already there when I arrived. His suit was extraordinarily dry, as if the rain found him as revolting as I did. His snake-like arms dangled, barely scraping the forest floor. He accessed me in silence. I didn't think he was blind, but I always had to remind myself that he could see me better than I could see him. I guess I would never get over the feeling that he was wearing some morbid Halloween costume. His long tentacles were absent for the time being, and one of his long arms stretched towards my face. His spindly finger explored my face and my Odie without ever touching it. I didn't hide the repulsive shivers it caused. Finally, it seemed as though he was deep into the trance, or enchantment, or whatever this monster could feel. I dug deep into my bag to unsheathe the knife, and I plunged it into his chest. He didn't look as if he were pain. Then again, he didn't look like anything. His face was still glued to my body as I screamed. My legs couldn't support me anymore, but I stood. His gaze literally wouldn't let me go. I felt blood seeping through my clothes, slithering down my torso. My knife was plunged into his chest, yet it wasn't him I had pierced. The forest began to black out. I realized that I wasn't fainting. It was Slenderman. His tentacles weren't absent, but were winding through the trees, dodging my vision. A slimy cloak enfolded me, and Slenderman's face became a smile, full of razor incisors, faced me. I understand why people like Helen don't search for monsters or deny their existence. People like her realize it before people like me. She understood me, or better yet, the monster inside of me. Slenderman doesn't exist. Sure, what you do as do the monsters inside. Story 6. You're not going crazy. It was the dead of night when the noises started. Sophie had always been a light sleeper, and she woke up almost instantly. What had woken her? The noise came again, sort of a scritchy sound that seemed to be coming directly from her left, probably just a tree branch scraping the house. It kind of sounded like it could be. Sophie tried to tell herself that's what it was, but she didn't really believe it. She pulled the covers closer, palms sweating. There was the scratching again. It had moved closer to her head. Tree branches didn't move. Her heart began to race and her hands started to shake. It came again, louder, closer. Should she get up and turn on the light? Get up and go to her parents' room? No, don't move. What was that? Stay put. Don't move. Okay, there was a weird voice in her head. Not good. Building up her courage, she ripped off the covers and ran for the door. Sophie raced down the hall and slammed the bedroom door behind her. The scritching stopped. Grabbing blankets from the guest bedroom, she flopped onto the couch and stayed there. Her parents would wonder why she was there in the morning, but it didn't matter. Eventually, Sophie fell asleep. Sophie worried about the voice all the next day. It had been very strange. She considered telling somebody, but they would just think she was crazy. Maybe she had just been dreaming or hearing things or only half awake. As the day wore on, she grew more and more apprehensive. That night, despite her better judgment, she went back to her room. She was fine. It was just one weird occurrence. Sophie stayed up a while, reading with the light on. I should turn off the light. The thought wasn't hers. It had come out of nowhere. But something else would say you, not I, right? Anyways, it was getting late. Yes, it's late. And I should turn off the light. Hearing voices was bad. Sophie had watched enough horror movies to know that. But this is different. This is my voice. I shouldn't worry about it. I guess it's okay, isn't it? Yes, it's okay. I should turn off the light now. Sophie hesitantly turned off the light. She held her breath, as if expecting to happen. Nothing's going to happen. I'm just being weird. Yeah, it must have just been that noise last night. Freaked me right out. But I should try to go to sleep now. Yes, I should go to sleep. Sophie tossed and turned, trying to get comfortable. It was very hot in there. She finally fell asleep. But just after midnight, the scritching started again. It was just a tree branch. No, it wasn't a tree branch. It was a tree branch scratching the house. Hey, I'm telling this story here. No, you're not. I am. Stop it. Never. So the tree branch continued to scratch. Sophie lay very still. But it's just a tree branch. I shouldn't worry. Yeah, just a tree branch. But she just couldn't shake the feeling that it was very hot in the room. No, she couldn't get comfortable because it was so hot. Ooh, go away. Let me tell my story, please. Just let me finish the story. Okay, fine. No more interruptions, I promise. Great. So Sophie just couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't a tree branch, that it was some sort of horrid creature scratching along the side of her house. But it's hot. I should open up a window. I guess it's a little warm, but I should open up a window. Fine, fine. I'll open a window. Sophie got up and opened a window. She peered out, half expecting something to happen. When nothing did, she let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a scaly, ugly hand shot out and snatched her wrist, dirty nails digging into her flesh. Sophie shrieked. The hand dragged her forward, out the window. She yelled louder. Upstairs, her parents heard the scream end abruptly. Sophie was never seen again, just like you. Wait, what? You said you would leave me alone until the end of the story. And we have reached the end. No, please no. I have a family and friends. You should have thought about that before you wrote about me. But wait, please. And you, reader, I see you too. Story 7, Lab Rat. Clang, my eyes snap open. Was I asleep? It's impossible to tell. The darkness around me has blurred the line between my waking and sleeping states, and I can no longer quite distinguish between dreams and reality. But it doesn't make a difference. It's all a nightmare. I hear the door to my cell open and recoil as the pale light from the hallway floods into my chamber. The man in the lab coat stands in the doorway. He beckons me by my name. I hate it when he uses my name. He tells me to come, and I obey, knowing by this point that resistance will only prolong my suffering. I stand weakly and gaze at him. Very good, he says. Come along. He leads me down the familiar white hallway past rooms full of ghastly experiments and terrible concoctions. But I know where we're going. We're going to the camera. Here we are, he says. We've reached our destination. He ushers me inside the small white room, his shoes clicking along the tile. On one side of the room, small camcorder atop a silver tripod, and a tape recorder sits on the counter next to it. I hate this place. I wonder what deranged plot he will subject me to. What vile concoction he'll force-feed me in the name of science. My eye falls on a container full of green liquid sitting alone atop the counter. "Are you ready?" he says. I try to respond, to say no, to beg him to let me go. But I know it's no use. I can barely remember the sensation of speaking, as my voice has been mutilated beyond repair by countless experiments and tests. All that I can create now are squeaks and wheezes. Good, good. Then let's begin. His skin is a sickly shade, almost green in the light. He presses record on both the tape recorder and the camcorder and begins, "Hello, gentlemen. This week my assistant will be testing a new solution that I have created to foster hair growth. This solution is entering human trials for the first time, and I'm eager to see the results." He turns to me. "If you would be so kind." He picks up the green liquid. He holds it out. But I don't take it. I stare at it for a moment, remembering in a flash every such time as this the camera, the lights, the room, and him, this sadistic devil of a man, his hand outstretched with some pill, some drink, some knife to tear apart the very fabric of my being. I explode, trying to scream, to curse, to strike the man, but my faint shrieks are only met with his iron grip as he holds me down and forces the serum down my throat. It tastes rancid. It makes me gag. Hot tears well up in my eyes as he rubs forcefully on my throat, making me swallow. "There now," he says, collecting himself. "We'll see the results in no time." That wasn't so bad, was it? I feel the shame well up inside of me. My eyes to the floor. I can't even remember who I am. So much of my memory has been cut out, and my mind is never released from the constant cycle of drug after drug after drug. Oh no. The serum is beginning to have an effect. I close my eyes tightly and wait. It begins slowly, but begins to gather speed. I feel an itch over every part of my body. I begin to scratch, but quickly realize that I cannot satisfy every twinge at once. It's coming from my scalp, my arms, my chest, my back, everywhere. I feel something brush against the back of my neck, my hair. My hair is growing everywhere, all over my body, all at once. It's enveloping me, coming out everywhere, my head, my eyelashes, my eyebrows, my arms, even my palms and my feet. It is overwhelming, and I panic. I can't see. All right, thank you. That's enough. I hear the man turn off his equipment and feel him grab me firmly, leading me out of the room. That was very helpful. He shoves me into what must be my cell and bids me a parting word before closing the door as I writhe beneath the never-ending lengths of hair racing out of my body. I enjoy our little experiments together. I'll see you next time. Beaker, Bonus Stories, Story 1, Our Secret Pond by Isaac Cook. The bright light of the sun flickered over us through the foliage above as we excitedly ran along the trail that led to our secret swimming pond. Both of us had been through this path many times, so our speed didn't arouse any concern of us getting lost. Coming to the familiar fork in the trail, we stopped. The left path was longer, and through the trees we could see Boy Scouts about our age coming in our direction. The right path was a shorter distance to the pond, so it seemed like the obvious option. As we were about to launch into a sprint, we stopped and glared down the path. An old man came into our view, tucking an unseen object into a dark, long trench coat, hastily walked towards us, lifting his head up from his task. He stared at us, his pace quickened, his eyes looked dark and unforgiving, with a glint to them that could drive you mad. Shooting a nervous glance at each other, a crooked smile crept up the old man's thin cheekbones. As we were both uneased by this, we quietly decided to take the longer path. We'd both rather endure a group of Boy Scouts on the small trail than that man. Releasing ourselves from the man's gaze, as the forest was to dance to see through the divide of bush to the other trail, I felt a sense of relief. We passed the Boy Scouts, recognizing some of them from school. It wasn't as awkward as we had previously thought. Now, being past the situation of the old man and the Boy Scouts, we both instantly launched ourselves into a sprint. Quickly reaching the pond, without saying a word, we both stripped off our shirts, shorts, and socks. Wearing only our boxes, we jumped in. The water was satisfyingly cool. I ran out of the pond and towards the rope swing, for I had never actually swung off it. But this time I was determined to push away my fear. Firmly holding the thick rope in both hands, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. As I opened them, I launched myself into the air, suspended by the rope. Everything felt like it was in slow motion as I let go of the rope and soared through the air, looking down at my target area, which was the deepest part of the pond. I felt a sense of pride. I had done it perfectly, and not gone too far and into the shallower parts. All my feelings of success vanished as bubbles started to arise from the pond's depths, and a dark figure drifted to the surface amongst my target area. In a split second I made out a human body and face. Its eye sockets lay open and empty. A pale expression of pain and remorse draped on its face. I let out a sharp scream as I collided with the body. Story 2. Creepy Woman. I live in what most people would consider to be a small town. It's nothing like back country, but a small suburb. I work in the city, which is about an hour commute from my house. In order to save gas, I bought a little old 250cc motorcycle that I use to ride to work and back. I usually start work in the afternoon and get off at around 11 p.m. This particular night, the boss needed a hand with some things, so I got off closer to 2 a.m. I didn't mind staying later because of the overtime pay, but I will say I felt a little delirious from lack of sleep towards the end of my shift. After work, I stopped by my favorite restaurant to pick up some sandwiches for my girlfriend and I to eat the next day. Then I was on my usual route home, but this time I decided to make a detour that I'd soon regret. I always take the highway, then exit onto a surface street that leads me the quickest way home. Off of the highway exit, there is a much more desolate road that runs along the hills, and despite it being a bit out of the way, I decided to take it. I hadn't been on that road since I was a child, but I had fond memory since I could recall fields with goats and horses. As I'd soon find, the road had changed very much from my memories. As I drove along, I noticed that the once nice-looking farmhouses were now abandoned, looking run down, and there were no animals that I could see. It was so dark that I could only see what my headlight illuminated. I realized that even as a kid, I had never driven through at night. A sign appeared at the side of the road that read nitrogen monoxide entry, and I could see the road ahead was really cracked and worn. The sign looked old, and I knew there was a definite way through. So I continued onward. Besides, at this point I was terribly sleepy, and I was too far along to turn back. Now I kept riding along at about 15 miles per hour, and out of the darkness I saw her. I crept up behind her as she walked in the middle of the road. I could already see from her hunched back that she was an old woman. As I got closer, she just kept walking, unknowing of my presence, it seemed. As I got within 15 feet of her, she quickly turned and jumped, looking startled. She looked as if she hadn't noticed me until I was right beside her. I slowed the bike to a crawl and gave a polite wave as I passed. "You can't be here," she screamed over the rumbling of the engine. I brought my bike to a halt and turned to look at her. I felt my adrenaline go up, but strangely I felt far more groggy as well. "You can't be here," she repeated, but this time her voice was deeper and more hoarse, that sending a shiver down my spine. As I gazed at her, I saw her face contort into what was beginning to resemble a dog, her eyes becoming darker and beddier. The hunch in her back was arching even more dramatically. I felt panic gripping me, yet I became even more groggy. My arms and legs felt as if I were trying to move them in my sleep. The last thing I remember was throttling the gas, thrusting the bike fast forward. A large animal was running beside me. Then everything turned black. I woke up the next morning in my bed feeling sick as if hungover. I couldn't remember how I'd gotten home, and my bike was parked out front. I mentioned the story to my brother and girlfriend, who both suggested that I must have dreamed it. I know that I hadn't. I also can't explain how the sandwiches I had just bought that night before were completely rotten. I haven't felt like myself since. Story 3. The Tall Man. I know of an old Romanian fairy tale, highly unpopular even in its earliest iterations. It might be based on a particular event, or perhaps it is an extrapolation from existing Slender Man stories. The translation I'm most familiar with goes a bit like this. Once upon a time there were twin girls, Stella and Serena. They were brave little girls and had no fear of the dark, nor of spiders and other crawling things, where other young ladies and even young boys would cower. Stella and Serena would walk with their heads held high. They were good girls, obedient to their mother and father and to the word of God. They were the best children a mother could ask for, and this was their undoing. One day Stella and Serena were out with their mother gathering berries from the forest. Their mother bid them stay close to her, and they listened. As they were good children, the day was bright and clear, and even as they walked closer to the center of the forest, the light barely dimmed. It was nearly bright as noon when they found the tall man. The tall man stood in a clearing, dressed as a nobleman, all in black. Shadows lay over him, dark as a cloudy midnight. He had many arms, all long and boneless as snakes, all sharp as swords, and they writhed like worms on nails. He did not speak, but made his intentions known. Their mother tried not to listen, but she could no more disobey the tall man than she could forget how to breathe. She walked into the clearing, her daughters shortly behind her. "Stella," she said, "take my knife and cut a circle on the ground big enough to lie in." Stella, who was not afraid of the tall man, nor afraid of the quiver in her mother's voice, obeyed what her mother said. Serena, the mother, said, "Take the berries and spread them in the circle and crush them underfoot until the juice stains the earth." Though Serena wondered why her mother asked her to do such a thing, she obeyed because she was a good girl. "Stila," the mother said, "lie in the circle." Stila, though she worried she might stain her clothes, did as her mother asked. Serena, the mother said, and bid Serena cut her sister open with the knife. Serena would not please. Her mother said, "If you don't, it will be worse, so much worse." But Serena could not, and she threw the knife away and ran home, crying. She hid under her bed, afraid for the first time in her life. She waited until her father came home from the fields and told him of the terrible thing she had found in the woods. Her father comforted her and told her she would be safe. He went to the woods, his axe in hand, and as he commanded, she stayed by the hearth, waiting for his return. After some time she fell asleep. When she woke, it was to the sound of knocking on her door at the darkest hour of the night. "Who is there?" she said. "It is your father," the knocker said. "I don't believe you," said Serena. "It is your sister," the knocker said. "It cannot be," said Serena. "I am your mother," said the knocker, "and I told you it would be worse." And the door, locked tight before her father left, fell open as if it had been left ajar, and her mother stepped in. Her sister's head clutched in one bloody hand, her father's in the other. "Why?" wept Serena. "Because," said her mother, "there is no reward for goodness. There is no respite for faith. There is nothing but cold steel teeth and scourging fire for all of us, and it's coming for you now." And the tall man slid from the fire and clenched Serena in his burning embrace. And that was the end of her. Adapted from an excerpt from the book American, Medieval, Nature and Mind and Cultural Transfer, edited by Gillian R. Overing and Ulrich Wheathouse. Story 4. Red Eyes. Like all small towns, the one I grew up in had its legends. In my town, there's one particular legend I've heard since I was a kid. The people telling it, though, never agree on the details. They like to talk about something. Some say takes the form of a man. Others say it's a demon or an alien. They all agree on the glowing red eyes, the last thing you see before you die. This legend makes no sense, of course. If these eyes are the last thing someone sees before they die, how could they have told anyone what they had seen? Besides, legends of the last thing you see exist all around the world. So what are those two red glowing dots I see in the distance? I see them in the trees on the other side of the field. It's pitch black. There's no moon. The only light is coming from those eyes. They're pointed away from me. Does it know I'm here? Is this a trick of my imagination? I look away, then look back. It's still there. Shit. Will it hear me if I move? Where would I go? Even if I made it back to camp, would that help me? Would the other guys be able to do anything? Or would they even be able to help me? I can't see whatever it is. All I can see are the red, glowing eyes, moving back and forth, darting around like it was just some animal moving about in the woods. Is it just some animal? I can't tell. I'm no woodsman. Maybe there's a logical explanation. I step backwards slowly. The leaves make a soft crunch. I don't think it heard anything. The eyes didn't stop or jerk. I move backwards one more time, the same soft crunch. The eyes still haven't seen me. I turn around and start walking, slowly, through the trees. At first, treading as lightly as I can, Eventually, I feel a little safer and start moving a little faster, a little louder, but still conscious of what's behind me. I look back every once in a while, but the eyes are out of sight, masked by trees. I keep moving forward towards camp. No idea what to make of what just happened. I'll find my buddies, get into my tent, and just forget everything I saw. Holy shit, what just passed by in front of me? Two glowing red dots sped across my path. How far away was it? It was close enough that I could hear the rustling of the leaves as it ran by. I stand still, frozen, not even breathing. It can't have seen me. I look around, but see nothing. There's complete silence. Why did I come out here? Can I even find my way back to camp in this darkness? Do I have any chance of getting away from it? I hear something rustle. I look in the direction of the sound, but I see nothing, just pitch black. I breathe as quietly as possible, listening into the silence, but hearing nothing. I creep forward slowly, still listening, but only hearing myself. Then I feel it. It's right beside me, but I don't dare turn my head to see it. I bolt forward into the black, running into trees, through sticks and branches, getting cuts and scrapes, but not feeling any of them. I'm running for my life. I don't even know which direction I'm going in. Then I fall, knocked down. I face the ground without seeing it. All I see is the same blackness that's all around me. There's nowhere to go. It has me. But I knew there was no getting away from the start. It was pointless, too. Even try running. There's no way out now, except to finally lift my head and look into the glowing red eyes. Story 5. Unknown number. Jesus. I cry, being jolted from a half-doze at 1:45. Midnight by my new Halloween theme ringtone didn't do wonders for my heart rate, especially since I'd momentarily forgot I'd changed the tone at all that day. Took me a while to find my phone stuck down the side of the armchair I was sitting in, not helped by the fact that the only light in the sitting room was the static on the widescreen TV. Unknown number. I answered it. There was no one there. To be honest, I was expecting heavy breathing on the other end, as I was still a little freaked out, but there was no noise at all. I hung up, took a deep breath, and frowned. Maybe I just pocket dial myself. My old iPhone could make a fake self-call designed to create a diversion. So if I was having a boring conversation with someone, I could pretend Mom was ringing or something, although I wasn't familiar at all with this new piece of crap. Dad bought it from a gas station for $20 a few days ago, as I'd lost my iPhone on a trip to the city last week. I flicked through the features on the menu screen trying to find the fake call option, but didn't have much luck. For one thing, the screen was about half the size of a card. I cursed and decided to watch TV instead to take my mind off things. I tried using the light of my cell to find the remote with little success. Groaning out of laziness, I hauled myself out of the chair to get to the light switch. Stopping halfway, I registered the fact that I had the TV on the satellite channels when I fell asleep. Yet static from the analog aerial. I ran the rest of the way to the switch and basically punched it. Light flooded the room, and my darting eyes saw nothing. After another deep breath, my moment of fear passed. Guess I was a little unused to having the whole house to myself. Mom and Dad were only gone for the night, but it was quite a treat for me since they rarely went anywhere even during the day. Nowhere to go but fields around this part of the country. So them going to a friend's wedding meant I finally had some solitude. I still couldn't see the remote, so I decided to recheck the sides of the armchair. I threw my phone on the seat and reached deep. Down either side, the phone rang again at full creepy blast with my ear pressed right up against it. I angrily grabbed it. Damn it, what? Again there was dead silence. Cursing, I threw the phone back on the seat hard. Pop. At that moment the light bulb blew out violently, and the power went out, thrusting me into total darkness. With a shriek, I scrambled to grab the phone again and found it. After an instant of blind terror, using the tiny screen light to see, I panicked and bolted down to my room as fast as I could, jumped into bed and pulled the covers. I curled into a fetal position. I was panting hard from both the run and the fear. I couldn't form any thought for about 5 breaths until I decided to call Dad. Looking at the screen, I saw I forgot to hang up the last call. My breath caught in my throat as I saw that this time it wasn't an unknown number. It was mine, my old number from the phone I'd lost. As I hit the red button, my terrified mind began to race through 1,000 horrible implications until I realized something else. My bed was already warm. Beep, beep. The message tone nearly gave me a heart attack. It's under your pillow. Ever so. Slowly, my trembling hand slid underneath the pillow and found the TV remote. From under the covers, I heard my bedroom door close, then lock. Story 6, Dark Matter. Professor Salik's Scientific Ethics Class, 3rd grade, 5th period. Salik ambles to his desk, tapping the holographic display. All right, class, settle down, settle down. He taps on his desk again, and the display changes to show the galaxy. As you've learned in your previous class, space is relatively flat. For years we puzzled over the problem of mass. There just isn't enough to account for the structure. The holographic image changes to reveal the dark gaps in space between matter. Salik points at the dark regions. A paper airplane soars through display, just missing his finger. He turns and gives a stern look over the class. We only have 3 more ticks and class is over. So please behave. Several children straighten up. Salik looks into space for a moment. Where was I? Finding his concentration, he begins again with renewed energy. Oh yes, back when we were a little less informed, we believed in some mystical dark matter that affected the structure of space. A couple students snicker. He smiles. Yes, it is pretty funny. Salik sits down. Who can tell me what happened to all that missing matter? Hands tentatively start to go up. Salik points out a student in the back. Yes, Marek. Marek stands. It was destroyed. Salik smiles. Yes, to a degree it was destroyed. But how can we describe the process better? Salik points out another student. This student stands. It was devoured. By what class? In unison, the class answers, a vacuum energy explosion. Salik sits down on the edge of his desk. Yes, every one of the dark regions represents, he pauses, an accident. He shifts to face the projection. Some unfortunate cultures discovered and made the mistake of trying to tap this energy source, and in the process destroy themselves and millions of light years of space, consuming an untold number of other cultures. Sewell raises her hand. Yes, Sewell, Salik says. Why did so many try it? Didn't anybody warn them? Some of the other students laugh. Salik gives them a warning glance and looks to the clock on the wall. He turns and smiles, putting Sewell at ease. That is a very good question. Salick makes a gesture with his hand, and the display zooms in on a dark region. The distance and time it would take to send an artificial message makes it impossible to send a warning. Now we, being a race particularly sensitive to psychic waves, can communicate over great distances with races who have this talent. Salick says this communication is still sketchy at best. He looks comforting at Sewell and then to the rest of the class. Rest assured, any race that we can speak with gets a warning. Sewell and several other students look a little more relieved. Sewell raises her hand again. Yes, Sewell. How did we get a warning? Sewell asks innocently. He sinks behind his desk, looking past the class, as if just lost in thought. He changes the projection to a different dark region. We call this the awakening expanse. A more surely student raises his hand. Professor. Salick is relieved to have been distracted. Yes, the student continues, egged on by his friends. Why is there a ban on this experimentation? Surely, as advanced as we are scientifically, we can handle it. His friends chuckle. Salick shakes his head and looks disappointed at the student. We must never be so arrogant to think that. Salick stops and looks apologetic. I'm sorry, class. He stands and looks around the room. You are very young and have become numb to it, but we, the older generation, haven't. Salick looks at the display. In the center of the awakening expanse was a small planet called Earth. The race that occupied this planet, even if they didn't know it, was particularly talented at broadcasting their psychic waves. Salick looks down and takes a deep breath. You see, class, we will never experiment with vacuum energy, because we can still hear their screaming in our dreams. The bell rings. Story 7, Tunnels. Before I begin, there are 2 pieces of information you must consider. Have you ever noticed that whenever a mirror is reflected into another mirror, after multiple reflections it begins to fade into a darker and greener infinity? The mirror can be cracked or completely unblemished. It simply does not matter. The light will always disappear and greenify the deeper the reflection tunnel runs. It is not wise for one to purposely create these tunnels, but for the curious, which I'm assuming you are, they are at least very interesting. Secondly, yes, your doppelganger does live as your immediate reflection on the surface of the mirror. The good news is they are harmless. They live as you do, as clueless as you when they see you in their reflection. Why should they question your intentions when they have none themselves? They live with as much or as little peace as you do in a single reflection. It need not matter the day, place, or position of the moon for this to occur. Though the darker it is, the easier it is for them to approach. It would also be a good idea to note the precise time at which you begin for reasons that will be made clear later. You must have 2 large mirrors facing each other with roughly 1 meter between them. Stand between them and do not make a sound. In fact, the location you choose must be free from any extraneous noise. This is of the utmost importance. They frighten easily, especially in the beginning. You must be able to see your entire reflection in the mirror you decide to face. Count as many frames as you possibly can over your reflection's shoulder until the greenness and darkness swallows the last remnants of the reflection, depending on the amount of light in your location. This should take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. Feel free to take your time as your eyes strain to count the last visible frame. you should notice pale shapes emerge in the furthest green of the mirror tunnel before they retreat into their infinity again. This may just be a trick of the mind at first, but slowly you will begin to see them more and more frequently. Once they begin appearing at more and more regular intervals, you may notice an uneasy expression appear on your reflection's face. Although you may feel your own face at ease, step out from between the mirrors immediately at this point, exit the room you were in, and lock the door behind you. They have awakened. If on the second day you feel as curious as the first, you may repeat the same process as described above. It must begin at the exact same time you had started the previous day. Hence, having write it down, those things that you may have glimpsed at for only a few seconds may reappear more readily if you have earned their favor. Your reflection may appear a bit shaken, but that is only a trick of the mind and nothing you need to worry about. Once you have finished counting back as many frames as possible, blink only once to refocus yourself. You should not close your eyes again. Not that you actually could. If you wanted to, you may begin to notice that they appear not only in the darkest frame of the tunnel, but now in closer frames. You can't make out anything that could be considered a face. Give or take the blur of what could resemble teeth. Don't let your curiosity blind you. Looking for human similarities in them is fruitless, even though you will continue to try to understand them. If ever they appear in any frame less than 6 away from your own reflection, they have become too comfortable with you and you with them. They have become too beautiful to ignore. You have become too focused on them to notice your own reflection, pointing, warning you about the thing reaching through the mirror behind you.